What's up, everyone? I'm back and I am here for a review of Joker Folie Deux. And I know I said in the last video I would probably post this on the Saturday morning, and it is now Saturday evening, but I saw this film last night and I wanted a bit more time to ruminate on it because I think there's quite a bit to talk about, but more on that later. So first, let's look at the trailer.
2 years ago, the name Arthur Fleck hit Gotham like a hurricane.
The trial
So
of the
Joker
century.
Folie à Deux is a 2024 release directed by Todd Phillips, who also directed the 2019 film Joker, which came out to much acclaim, and it is once again starring Joaquin Phoenix in the titular role of Arthur Fleck, and is joined by Lady Gaga as Lee Quinzel, as well as Brendan Gleeson and Catherine Keener. And the plot kind of goes that while struggling with his dual identity, Arthur Fleck not only stumbles upon true love, but also finds the music that's always been inside him. So immediately we're gonna backpedal a little bit back to 2019 when the first Joker film was released. Now that did the rounds at Venice Film Festival, won a couple of prizes, was Oscar winning, came out to huge acclaim from audiences and kind of decent to positive reviews from critics as well. And it made a buttload of money, I think raking in about $1 billion at the box office. So it was a huge release for Warner Brothers, and they were obviously keen to do another one, and Phillips was keen to get involved as well. And he had said that this film was a musical this time round. Now, there's been a lot kind of going around about like how this is a musical, and Phillips has said some weird comments himself. But I will start off by saying that yes, this film is definitely a musical. And it's an odd decision, I think, and we will get there in this review, but I do want to focus on the first film and the kind of message it sent when it first came out. So I feel like the majority of critics kind of took that film as its mission statement was, if you are one of the downtrodden of society, you can kind of get your own back against people, and that kind of makes it okay. It was kind of like dubbed Incel the movie, and a lot of critics said like this is exactly what's wrong with America and what's wrong with audiences, but audiences seems to really take to it in the fact that it was a pretty cool Joker film. I kind of landed somewhere in the middle on that one. I did like the first Joker film. I thought it looked beautiful. I thought the soundtrack was fantastic. Phoenix was very good in that role. He even won an Oscar for it. And I wasn't really on the side with a lot of critics being like, the message in this film is problematic. And I wasn't on the side of audiences being like, this is some bona fide masterpiece. I was just like, this is good. It's a fresh take, I guess, on this character and trying to tell some sort of socio-political message through it, which I think is a very fresh thing needed in a lot of superhero properties nowadays. Now, Phillips has actually come out and said that his whole thing with the first Joker film wasn't to send that message that a lot of critics seem to take of this kind of incel thing of the world is harsh and it's okay to retaliate back. He had stated that he was trying to just put out more of a message of there's no empathy in the world that we live in, and that can lead to these sorts of characters cropping up in society and being very problematic and going on a murdering spree. And he's decided to try and rectify that, I guess, here by making a musical. So we're dealing with problems with songs. And I know I have said this a lot with a couple of films. This is a particularly difficult one for me to review and kind of express how I feel. Like, normally I would go to the theater, I would watch a film, I'd come back home immediately, I would think for about 30 minutes about what I want to say, and I would record a review, I would edit it, and I would post it maybe the next morning. But in the case of this one, I actually came home and my flatmate was here, and she asked me, like, oh, what did you think of the new Joker film? And the only answer I could kind of fire back was, I don't know. But now I think that I've taken more time to think on it, and I've done a little bit of reading as well, and I've just processed my thoughts. I think I'm ready to actually tell you how I feel. The TLDR is it does some very good things, and I do think that Phillips is actually kind of successful in trying to rectify the message that the first film sent and sending the message that he really wants to send. But I think in doing that, I feel like this movie kind of hates everyone that loved and revered the message in the first film. And we're about to get to why. So we're obviously back with Arthur Fleck, played by Phoenix. He is now in Arkham State Hospital, in this film not called the typical Arkham Asylum. He's going through the motions. There are obviously shithead guards there. He's having to take medication. But he's got his trial coming up, and he's got this lawyer with him, played by Catherine Keener, and she is convinced that he has got some kind of split personality disorder, and that the person responsible for the murders in the first film was the Joker, and not Arthur Fleck, and those are different entities. It's been 2 years since the events in the first film have taken place, and in that time there's been a TV movie made about the character of the Joker, depicting exactly what happened over that period with Arthur Fleck, and it's gained quite a following. He's got like huge supporters on the streets. They're all wearing the makeup that he wore. They got picket lines and like signs and stuff like that. And it all seems to be a bit like sensationalism to the max with this character who's now become a martyr to the downtrodden of Gotham City. Very early on in his time in the hospital, he gets taken to a singing lesson where he meets Lee Quinzel, obviously Harley Quinn, played by Lady Gaga in this role. And that's where the musical elements start to really come into this film. And they're very weird. They're weird in the sense of every single one of them is a fantasy as if it's happening in Arthur's head, and they sometimes go to more fantastical locations. They're sung in this really weird, like almost talky, whispery kind of way for the most part. There aren't these parts of like actors having to belt out these huge high notes. Gaga has to do it a couple of times, but mostly it's almost like spoken singing, I'm going to call it. And unfortunately, I think for the most part, they don't really work. And I say that they don't really work because I do like musicals. And when I go and see a musical, I expect at least half the time to come out of the film and have it humming in my head, maybe even singing it out loud, and they're very memorable. In this film, I came out of it and I can't even remember a particular musical number that they did. And therefore, that makes it not memorable for me. So I think on the musical side, it doesn't really work. It's definitely an interesting idea to explain the psyche of Arthur Fleck and what he's going through and how he processes his internal emotions through the use of music, but I think it kind of falls on its face a little bit. And I mentioned before that there's this sensationalism around the Joker and he's got this huge following as a martyr, and that is what I think is one of the messages that Phillips is trying to send with this film this time. And it's very on the nose. The character of Arthur Fleck actually does say it out loud at one point. I think he says, like, all you people want is sensationalism. And that's kind of what we get. And while it is a good point, it's just not very well done here, I think. There are moments in the film where I thought it was being used really well. There's a particular moment in the trial where it does go full on sensationalism. And that's when I thought, like, okay, now you can really send a message with this and you can kind of take it places. But unfortunately, the film kind of falls into not having any real message at all, in my opinion. And that's due to its ending. It's got a very strange final 15 minutes where a lot happens and it kind of comes to a dead stop. And I was sat there thinking, what was the point of the previous 2 hours in this 2 hour and 20-minute film? It is essentially a courtroom drama about a villain that we know from a superhero property. So anyone going into this expecting to see like Joker schemes and stuff like that and more murders, you're going to be bitterly disappointed with this one, because that's simply not what Phillips is trying to do here. And to go onto Phillips as a director in this, I actually think this is a much better directed film than the first Joker. I mean, the first Joker gets a lot of hate. Like, I'm guilty of saying it myself as baby's first Scorsese, because it is so close to Taxi Driver and even King of Comedy in not just in the story, but even just in the way it's directed in certain shots. But he actually shows in this film that there's a lot that he's actually cooking with. There's a really, really great Wanna sequence towards the end of the film where I was actually really impressed. Like, from the cinematography point of view, this is another very good-looking film. Its use of color is very intelligent as well. But what is really lacking here is just a true substance and core in the storytelling. And that's where I come to the point which I alluded to earlier, where I think this movie or its director hates the audience that it gained from the first film. I think Phillips feels like the first film was totally misconstrued by both sides of the argument, both by critics and by audiences. And with this one, he's kind of just gone, here you go, you know? You thought I was trying to say this, but I'm actually really trying to say this other thing, and this is what it is. And that sounds really vague because I'm not trying to spoil anything, and that makes it kind of difficult to talk about. But I did get the kind of feeling that especially with the ending of this film, that Phillips was just sitting there flipping the bird to the screen and just being like, look, this is what I wanted to do. To speak about performances overall, I mean, Phoenix is great, extremely committed. I don't know what is going on with that man's body and how he can just lose weight. I don't know if his really messed up shoulder in this film is a previous injury he's had, or they've put prosthetics on him, but he is fantastic in this film, and especially in the musical and dance sequences. He's always great, and it's just become a given with this actor nowadays. With Gaga, this is where it was a little bit hit and miss, and I think it's mainly down to the script. She does all the physical stuff really well, but her character is just really, really thin. And it's a shame, because Batman is one of my favorite superheroes of all time. I've read a ton of comics. I adore the Joker. I love Harley Quinn. and they kind of just do nothing with that character. Like, any kind of development that she has is just sheer exposition, where it's just blurted out by another character, and that's a waste with a character as good as Harley Quinn. So to kind of surmise where I'm going to end on this film, it is very well directed. I was actually very impressed with what Phillips has done. The soundtrack is incredible. It's impeccably shot. The performances are good to lukewarm, and that's fine when you have a film of this kind of stature. But ultimately, its core messaging just feels extremely muddled. And I think it's going to hit for a lot of people. Some people already really like this film, and a lot of people really hate this film. And I feel like I'm coming somewhere in the middle of this. I actually like the fact that Phillips has tried to rectify the message he tried to send with the first film by righting the wrongs in this one. I do, however, just think that in the hands of a better writer, this could have been much better done. But yeah, Joker, Folie, Deux. I don't quite like it. I don't quite hate it. I respect a lot of it. And ultimately, I think it's just going to be extremely, extremely divisive. I think if you loved the first one, you are going to have to broaden your horizons a little bit on this one, and otherwise you'll end up quite disappointed. And I think if you really didn't like the first one, that the messaging in this will actually do a lot to fix that for you. Because I think that's what this one did for me. I think I kind of liked them as a two-parter. If they were maybe a bit more connected, maybe a TV series where they had a bit more time to flesh things out, this would have worked more. But that's kind of where I am. So as usual, we've come to this point in the video. If you have seen Joker, Folie, Deux, I would love you to get involved in the comments. If you're excited to watch it, please let me know there as well. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this with your friends. Every little bit helps. I will hopefully be on the Adlib podcast on Monday night. That will be at 8:30 p.m. in Malta, 7:30 p.m. in the UK. You can find us live on the YouTube channel. As for upcoming films, there's actually quite a few. I do want to try and go and see A Different Man. Maybe I'll try catch that tomorrow, but I kind of doubt it. There's The Wild Robot coming out as well. So I'm going to be pretty busy, and content is going to keep coming. I also do want to add that I'm going to start doing some kind of like YouTube shorts and maybe a TikTok of just films I watch in my free time that obviously aren't at the cinema or have just released on digital, and just very short 1-minute reviews and recommendations on those. But until the next time I see you, I hope you are the joy in the world. Always put on a happy face, and thank you for watching.